Hello everyone, I am Dr. Ekta Bhushan, teaching Anatomy and Physiology of Exercise at Indira Gandhi Institute of Physical Education at Sports Sciences, University of Delhi. I welcome you all to online lectures of CEC-UGC. In this series, we discuss different topics associated with anatomy and physiology of exercise, but today in particular, we will discuss the topic, the nervous system. So, living organisms adapt to their moves and positions in response to the environmental changes for their protection or to their advantage. When an entity reacts to the changes in its surroundings, it is referred to as stimulus, while the reactions to the stimulus is referred to as a response. Common stimuli are sound, light, air, heat, smell, taste, water, gravity. Think of burning your finger or fracturing your bone without any pain sensation. It may certainly sound like superpower or an ideal situation. However, when it comes to a standpoint of survival, it can be disastrous. It is a characteristic behavior of living entities to respond to stimuli. With the intervention of nervous system, it is an organ system equipped to send signals from the spinal cord and the brain throughout the body and then back from all body parts to the brain. Neurons act as a mediator and is the basic signaling unit of nervous system. Pain is the body's way of letting us know that something is not right. It can prevent further injuries or push us to seek medical attention. Moreover, all of this is possible because humans can respond and react to stimuli due to control and coordination among the various organs and organ systems. So, controlling and coordination in simple multicellular organism take place through only the nervous system, which coordinates activities of our body. It is the control system for all our actions, thinking and behavior. Let us have a detailed look at the nervous system. Notes to explore what is nervous system and the different functions of the nervous system. So, what is the nervous system? In the human body, the nervous system or neural system integrates the activities of organs based on the stimuli which the neurons detect and transmit. They transmit messages in the form of electrical impulses, convey messages to and from the sense organs. Thus, the nervous coordination involves the participation of the sense organs, nerves, spinal cord and brain. So, these are the functions of nervous system. The first one is sensory input. Sensory receptors detect external and internal stimuli. Then second one is integration. The brain and spinal cord process sensory inputs and produce responses. The third one is homeostasis. The nervous system coordinates the activities of other systems in order to maintain homeostasis. Then mental activities, I say to myself, self. What do you think? Means whatever you are saying, whatever you are observing, you are thinking, and what is your reaction is up to your mental observation. Then control muscles and glands. So, the human nervous system consists of two parts. First one is central nervous system, which consists of the brain and spinal cord. And the second one is peripheral nervous system. It includes all the nerves of the body. In this part, we are going to study about central nervous system. So, central nervous system is often called the central processing unit of the body. It consists of the brain and the spinal cord. So the central nervous system is the most important unit in the organism, as it is the center or the hub which instigates information, commands and coordinates, and also influences all the other activities within the body. Thus, it is often called the central processing unit of the body. The central nervous system mainly comprises of two parts, the brain and the spinal cord. So, this is the picture which represents the cells of the central nervous system. You can see the different kind of cells. Here there are capillaries, there are neurons, and which we are going to study. So, there are various cells which act as the major unit to help in the function of the central nervous system properly, out of which neurons, dendrites and glial cells are the major ones. These cells are connected to the brain, where all the information is stored and intact. So, here we can see the structure of neuron. As I have told you earlier also, neuron is the working unit or functioning unit of nervous system. Here we can see the two main parts of neuron. First is dendrites and another one is axon. In dendrites, in the middle, we can see the nucleus also, the nucleus cell, and then we can see myelin and the axon terminals, and in detail we are going to study about the neuron also. So, the dendrite stretches out from the cell body of a neuron, and it is the shortest fiber in the cell body. Axon is the longest thread on the cell body of a neuron and has an insulating and protective sheath of myelin around it. Cell body consists of cytoplasm and nucleus. Synapse is the microscopic gap between a pair of adjacent neurons over which nerve impulses passes when moving from one neuron to the other. Now, we'll move to the other cell, which is glial cell, and this is the structure of glial cell. So, there are basically three different types of glial cells that functions to provide the neutrons which metabolism and mechanical support. These cells are astrocytes, the first one is, and they are star-shaped glial cell of the nervous system, which performs various functions from biochemical supporting of the endothelial cells to repair and scan the process of the brain and the spinal cord during injuries. The second one is oligodendrocytes. The primary function of oligodendrocyte is in glial cell is to provide support and wrap around the axon. In other to do this, they produce a fatty substance called myelin sheet, which allows the nervous cell to send and receive signal quickly. The third one is the microglia. They comprises of the 10 to 15% of all the cells in the brain, which act as the resistance cell. Their foremost role is to act as immune defense and helps in cleaning out the dead and dying cells. So, these are the types of neuroglia which we have just learned, and there are neuroglia of central nervous system also and the peripheral nervous system also. We can see the structure of all of them. Now, we will talk about the nerves associated with nervous system. So, nerves are thread-like structures that emerge from the brain and spinal cord. It is responsible for carrying messages to all the parts of the body. There are 3 types of nerves. Some of these neurons can fire signals at speed of over 119 miles or above 248 km per hour. So the nerves are sensory nerves, motor nerves and mixed nerves. Sensory nerves sends messages from all the senses to the brain. Senses like hearing, sight or olfactory. Then motor nerves carry messages from the brain to all the muscles. Then mixed nerves carry both sensory and motor nerves. Now we'll study about the brain. The human brain is composed of 3 major parts. The first one is forebrain. The anterior part of the brain consists of cerebellum, hypothalamus and thalamus. Then midbrain, the smaller and central part of the brainstem consists of tectum and tegmentum. Then hindbrain, the central region of the brain composed of cerebellum, medulla and pons. So this is the structure of brain. Here we can see the frontal lobe of the brain, the parietal lobe, the occipital lobe and the temporal lobe. And we can see the brainstem, cerebellum and medulla oblongata also. So the brain is broken up into 2 hemispheres, the left and the right, where they are constant communication. The left and right hemisphere are responsible for different behaviors known as brain lateralization. The left hemisphere is more dominant with language, logic and math abilities. The right hemisphere is more creative, being dominant in artistic and musical situations and intuitions. Now we'll talk about cerebral cortex. You can see the structure of cerebral cortex. This is the upper portion of the cerebral, which we called as cortex. Cortex is the lining of the cerebral. So the cerebral cortex is the outermost layer that surrounds the brain. It is composed of grey matter and filled with billions of neurons used to conduct high-level executive functions. The cortex divides into 4 lobes: frontal, parietal, occipital and temporal by different sulci. Here we can see the functioning of all these lobes. So we can see the frontal lobe, parietal, occipital and temporal, and we can see the different functions also, like in frontal we can see the speech, the paramotor, primary motor activities. These are all the functions which all these lobes do. So the next one is basal ganglia. This is a very small part in the brain. The yellow one is the cerebral cortex, and in between that there is a small ganglia organ. So the basal nuclei, also known as basal ganglia, is located deep within the cerebral white matter and is composed of the caudate nucleus, putamen and globus pallidus. These structures form the pallidum and stratum. The basal ganglia are responsible for muscle movement and coordination. The next one is thalamus. You can see the structure. There is a cerebrum and very small thalamus also. So the thalamus is the relay center of the brain. It receives afferent impulses from sensory receptors located throughout the body and process the information for distribution to the appropriate cortical area. It is also responsible for regulating consciousness and sleep. The next one is hypothalamus. This is the smallest part of nervous system, a very small pea-shaped structure in the brain. So while the hypothalamus is one of the smallest part of the brain, it is vital to maintaining homeostasis. The hypothalamus connects the central nervous system to the endocrine system. It is responsible for heart rate, blood pressure, appetite, thirst, temperature, and the release of various hormones. Now, pons. So this is the part of the brain. We can see the green one, pons. So found in the brain stem, the pons connect the medulla oblongata and the thalamus. It is composed of tracts responsible for relaying impulses from the motor cortex to the cerebellum, medulla and the thalamus. Now, this next one is medulla oblongata. We can see the situation of medulla oblongata in the brain. So, the medulla oblongata is at the bottom of the brainstem, where the spinal cord meets the foramen magnum of the skull. It is responsible for autonomic functions, some of which are crucial for survival. The medulla oblongata monitors the body respiratory system using chemoreceptors. These receptors are able to detect changes in the blood chemistry. For example, if the blood is too acidic, the medulla oblongata will increase the respiratory rate, allowing for more oxygen to reach the blood. It is also a cardiovascular and vasomotor center. The medulla oblongata can regulate the body's blood pressure, pulse and cardiac contractions based on the body's need. Lastly, it controls reflexes like vomiting, swallowing, coughing and sneezing. The next one is cerebellum. We also called it a small brain. The cerebrum, also known as the little brain, is responsible for smooth coordination, voluntary movement. It subdivides into 3 lobes, the anterior, posterior and flucolunodular lobes. The cerebellum contains a cerebellar peduncles to communicate to other parts of the brain. The superior cerebellum peduncle is composed of white matter that connects the cerebellum to the midbrain and allows the coordination in the arms and legs. The inferior cerebellar peduncle connects the medulla and cerebellum using the proprioceptors to maintain balance and posture. Lastly, the middle cerebellum peduncle is used as a one-way communication method from the pons to the cerebellum. It is mostly composed of afferent fibers that alert the cerebellum about the voluntary motor actions. The cerebellum is in constant communication with the cerebral cortex, taking higher level instructions about the brain's intentions, processing them through the cerebellar cortex, then sending messages to the cerebral motor cortex to make voluntary muscles contractions. These contractions are calculated to determine the force, direction and momentum necessary to ensure each contraction is smooth and coordinated. Now we'll talk about the spinal cord. we can see the structure of spinal cord. Here we can see the vertebrae columns, and spinal cord is divided into different parts like cervical vertebrae, thoracic vertebrae, lumbar vertebrae, sacrum or coccyx, and different kinds of vertebrae, and we can see the structure of spinal cord also in between the vertebra. So the spinal cord proper extends from the foramen magnum of the skull to the first or second lumbar vertebra. It creates a two-way pathway between the brain and the body and divides into four regions: cervical, thoracic, lumbar and sacral. So these regions are then broken down into 31 segments with 31 pair of spinal nerves. There are 8 cervical nerves, 12 thoracic nerves, 5 lumbar nerves, then 5 sacral nerves and 1 coccygeal nerve. Each nerve exists the vertebral column passing through the intervertebral foramina and to its designated locations in the body. The spinal cord ends in a cone-shaped structure called conus medullaris and is supported to the end of coccyx by the filium terminal. Ligaments are found throughout the spinal column, securing the spinal cord from top to bottom. Now we'll talk about how it works. So there are two pathways. One is the ascending pathway, another one is the descending pathway. So we'll see what ascending pathway says. So the sensory information travels from the body to the spinal cord before reaching the brain. This information ascends upward using first, second and third order neurons. First order neurons receive impulses from skin and proprioceptors and send them to the spinal cord. They then synapse with second order neurons. Then the second order neurons live in the dorsal horns and send impulses to the thalamus and cerebellum. Lastly, third order neurons pick up these impulses in the thalamus and relay it to the somatosensory portion to the cerebrum. Somatosensory sensation are pressure, pain, temperature and body senses. Then the descending pathway. Descending tract sends motor signals from the brain to the lower motor neurons. These efferent neurons then produce muscle movements. So in conclusion, we can say that the central nervous system is the most important unit in the organism as it is the center of the hub which instigates information, commands and coordinates and also influences all the other activities within the body. Thus, it is called the central processing unit of the body. The central nervous system mainly comprises of two parts, the brain and the spinal cord. I hope you understood the nervous system, in particular central nervous system, neurons and other nerves. That's all for today. See you next time. Thank you.